Hello everyone and welcome back to Winter 89 Colors. My name is Melissa and I am here today with another fun color along for you. So as promised, I'm going to be doing a lot more of these, so hopefully you enjoy them. So we're going to be starting with this picture in Worlds of Wonder by Johanna Basford, and we're going to do the background using soft pastels. So I'm going to be using a mixture of Gallery by Mungyo and Pan Pastels. So these soft pastels, the Mungyo ones, I've had for a very, very long time and they've served me very well, and I think I'm going to have them for a long time coming. I'd love to get a larger set because there's only 24 colors, but I have to work with what I've got. So, all right, so I'm going to start and do this sky here. So we're going to make it a night sky because of the stars. I mean, we could make it a daytime sky if we really wanted to. It'd be pretty easy. We could turn those stars into little flecks of light or fireflies or whatever it is that we want to do. But in this particular case, because it's space timber, I'm going to be doing a night sky. So I'm using a little cotton pad here, and I'm starting with black. I'm going to go around the outermost edges. And in this particular case, because it's night, I'm not really worried about getting too much of the soft pastel onto the areas that I don't want it, because I will be erasing most of it, and anything that doesn't erase will simply actually just cast shadows and add to that nighttime effect, which is really cool. So that's why you don't see me being too ultra careful here. I'm just going to plaster it on the best that I can and try to mix it in and create this dark night sky. So I'm going to be using the black first. I'm going to go around and create that base layer, and then I'm going to fill in using a dark blue. I've long since lost the names and numbers of the colors that I have in these pastels, so I apologize for that. I'm just going to name them as appropriately as I can. I believe the blue that we're going to be using is somewhere between an indanthrone blue and an indigo blue, but it is a very dark blue. So you'll notice that every book that you work in with soft pastels, the paper will react a little bit differently. And in this book, it's a very old book. I've had it for quite some time. It is a little resistant to them at first, but the more I work them in, the better they get along. So it takes a little bit of working, but no worries, we do eventually get there in the end. So again, with this particular color along, you're going to notice that there is a lot of me just kind of figuring it out as I go, because that's my natural style. Oftentimes I will go into a picture having an idea of what I want to do, but it's usually very vague. It usually centers around one particular piece of the picture, not the picture as a whole. So, sorry, you can hear my rabbit in the background again. She's really giving us a hard time today. She's pretty angry. She just wants more food. That's all. I gave her breakfast, I promise. She's not starving. Anyway, so you can see I'm starting to move further into the center here with these, and just trying to create sort of an even base coat. I'm adding extra layers to the outer parts closer to the clouds to try and create that dark shaded effect, create that blend that we all want so much. But it's coming along quite nicely, and in the end I am fairly happy with the result of it. As I was saying, I went into this with some ideas, but not a clear picture of what it was going to look like. I kind of went piece to piece. I knew what I wanted the initial background to look like, and that's where I started. I started by doing these soft pastels for the dark night sky, and then once that was done, I took a step back and looked at the clouds next. The clouds made the most sense to me, and I moved on to using pan pastels with them. And then from there, the house, the balloons, everything else just sort of fell into place. So I hear a lot of you being really afraid of getting into a picture because you can't picture it finished at the end. And I will tell you that I almost never have the end picture in mind. I never know what it's going to look like until I'm much closer to finishing it. I start with one or two elements usually that makes sense to me, and I go from there. And usually it puts itself together as I'm going. So I think it's why I hesitated so much to do color alongs in the beginning, because I didn't have a clear picture and I was worried that it wasn't going to turn out well or something was going to mess up because I didn't have a plan going in. But I'm realizing now that most of the time, even going in without a plan, it comes out fine. I just have to be committed. I just have to go full throttle into it and trust the process. And so that's what I'm doing here with this particular picture. So, yeah, so I think that's what we're learning from this today, is that it usually turns out, and you should have faith in yourself, because if you've colored pictures before, you can color pictures again, and not all of them are going to turn out perfectly. You'll see in this one that things in certain places don't go exactly according to plan, and in a lot of my color alongs, you'll see that they don't go exactly according to plan. I have some coming up for you in the near future that I know very specifically things don't go exactly the way I want, but I'm not going to cut it out. I'm going to leave it in there for you so that you can see how things go wrong, how I get around it, or how I just leave it and let it be a part of the picture. It is what it is, right? Bob Ross would say they're happy little mistakes, and that's how we have to view it. So we're looking at the sky, and it's pretty much done here. I think I might add a few little bits to it to kind of fill in the little gaps, but it's more or less kind of where we want it. So I ended up being pretty happy with this, and soon we're going to be moving on to the clouds. So I'm just adding some more blue here to try and create a little diversity in the sky, so it's not all one color, so we get a little bit of changes and differences as we're moving along throughout the page, and that makes me very, very happy. So I'm just brushing off the dust here and allowing it to, make sure that we're not smudging it all over the place, because we don't want to have to erase any more than we have to. I mean, again, it's so easy to erase the pieces that we don't need, but having to erase more than you have to is just extra work for yourself, So you can see me going in here and erasing from the outside in. The dust does kind of get everywhere, so especially in a piece like this, you do have to do a lot of erasing, just to be on the safe side, just because it's, it does fly through the air, and even if you're really careful, it will land on edges of the page that you don't want it to. But you see how easy it comes off. It's really no big deal and only takes a few minutes to do this. I mean, as compared to doing a pencil background or something like that, it would, oh God, it's so much faster, so much faster. I enjoy the process of using soft pastels so very much in so many cases. I really do. So, right, and then I dust off all the little shavings and whatnot here just into the garbage, because I don't want them all over my desk. And now a little more of the fine detail work is coming up. Right, so we get out our electric eraser and go ahead and just get the work done. So I'll leave you for a few minutes while this goes along. Alrighty, so now we've got all that erased, and we are back into adding some little details here. You'll see a little couple of spots where I kind of missed. So I'm using a Q-tip, cotton bud, cotton swab, whatever you want to call it, just to get in these little tiny areas that I may have missed previously. This is a little less messy, so I'm not too worried about it getting where I don't want it. You can see that not all of the pastel erased perfectly, particularly in areas where I had to go over it a couple of times to get the density that I wanted around the edges of the house and the balloons, but that's okay. Realistically, we're still going to be covering it up. I'm going to be doing the house in pencil, which, by the way, I will be doing Arrtx pencil in this particular picture. I have had a lot of requests for Arrtx pencils. A lot of people seem to really, really like them, so I'm trying to use them more in my color alongs. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be possible for too much longer, as I am starting to run low on a few of the colors, and I can't afford to buy another set. So once some of my important colors run out, I'm going to have to start supplementing with colors from other sets and things like that, so it's not going to be a complete Arrtx picture, but c'est la vie. We shall adapt, won't we? All right, so once again, just getting all this dust off, making sure there's as little dust left out on the edges as possible, and just trying to keep things neat and clean. I had to clean my dusting brush after this picture because all the black pastel got on it and it was starting to drag onto the paper. So now I'm moving into using my pan pastels. And I have selected 3 colors for this, again, to make it mystical, magical, fun. I've chosen the lightest blue, the lightest purple, and the lightest pink. I only have 6 pan pastels available to me. I chose 6 of the very lightest pastel-y colors that they had available, because I find with soft pastels, I tend to be using them for backgrounds, so the soft colors are the ones that I use the most. So I decided to splurge on myself, and this was a while back, not recently, that I bought all 6 of these open stock from my local art supply store. The nice thing about pan pastel is I find that it goes on so smooth, thick, creamy. It requires so very little pressure to get a really even coat. On the negative side of that, sometimes I find that it does cover lines and, the artwork that is already previously there. It's really hard to keep things looking crisp with these. Whereas I find with some of the cheaper pastels, it requires a heck of a lot more layering to get that full opaque coverage. So, there's pros and cons to both, and I love both. They both have their purpose and their place. But I would really love to get some more pan pastels. I'd love to try out the Arrtx pastels, some Paul Rubens pastels. There's so many out there, and I'd really like to try to experiment with some more if at some point I come into the money to do so. That would be fantastic. But for right now, I'm happy that I have any at all. So let's go on and continue this. You can see I'm using different little sponge nibs for each of the colors that I have available to me, which makes it easier. I don't have to clean them every single time. I'm going to probably get a few more. They do wear out eventually, even if you're careful with them. I mean, they are cheap little pieces of foam, but it is what it is, right? Okay, so I'm going to leave you here for a little bit, and I'll be back in the next segment. So now that that is taken care of and all the pastels are in place, I am going to try and clean up the edges of the clouds and make them a little fluffier looking, get rid of some of this excess black pastel by using a white Prismacolor pencil. And I'm just going to burnish out the edges of each cloud to try and create a bit of a fluffier effect, create that nice soft whiteness, and just overall clean up the edges even further and cover up some of that black pastel in the way that it's sort of dusted over into the clouds. We don't want the clouds to be too dark, even though the shadows work well with the nighttime scene. You know, having a little bit of extra brightness on the edges just gives it that more cloudy, fluffy effect. So once again, I will leave you and I'll speed this up so that you can see how it goes, and I'll see you in the next segment. All right, so we've got all that done. We've cleaned up the edges, and now I'm going to take my Ohuhu acrylic markers and begin to line the outer edge of the cloud, get rid of those black lines to again create that fluffier, softer look. We don't need those harsh black lines in there. All that does is kind of create the illusion that the clouds are, you know, denser than they are. So folks, so we're moving into the pencil portion. We're going to color the house and the balloons, and I'm going to be using Arrtx pencils. So again, with this particular situation, with the leaves, I realized that green was going to have to be a part of this picture, and so I decided to make everything green and gold. To contrast the soft pastel colors of the clouds and everything else, I decided that I would just make it a very limited color palette and go with these greens. So it's a very interesting difference that the background seems to all be kind of in the cool color tones, and then the house and the balloons are all going to be in kind of warm color tones, which works out quite nicely, actually, surprisingly enough. So I'm going to go through, and of course all the colors will be on the screen for you. The rest is pretty much self-explanatory, so I will see you next time we change mediums. have a little experiment that didn't go so well. I wanted to create the shine look on these balloons. So I tried several different mediums to do that. I started out with a jelly roll white, trying to go over, but I think I had so much burnishing and so much other jelly roll in that it just wasn't sticking very well. It was just sliding all over the place and I wasn't having much luck with it. So I decided to try something different. So I went over to trying to use a Faber-Castell Pitt pen in white. I thought maybe that would stick a little bit better. But it did not. It just slid around and it didn't, appear opaque at all. You can see me using it here. It just was not working for me, so I didn't know what to do. So it took me a second, but I finally landed on using my Arrtx acrylic pen in white, and that worked much, much better. So that's what I ended up using to create the reflections on the balloons here, and that worked out pretty well. So you'll see it happening here, and yeah. So I think that's about it for that. I will see you again at the end of this video. going to jump in one more time here before the end of the video, folks. So I decided that instead of trying to clean up all that pastel out on the edge of the border, that I would just use some washi tape to cover it up and create a nice spectacular border. So you can see how I would go about doing that with this nice gold stuff. I just got this at the dollar store, I believe, Dollarama if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just sticking that down. Something I don't show you is that after I finished filming this and everything, it did start to unstick because it is washi tape, right? So sometimes it can be a little unsticky, so I ended up having to glue the corners of it down, but otherwise it stuck very well and worked out pretty nicely. So I'm gonna go through here. I've got my X-Acto knife to make sure that I'm making all the nice even cuts that I need. And you'll notice at the top there's actually a balloon that sticks outside the border. And so I end up having to cut around that balloon, and you'll see me go ahead and go through that process as well. And I got really lucky. Actually, it just worked out perfectly. So I will leave you to that, and now I will see you at the end of the video. there's our finished page. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope it helped you learn something or helped you gain some confidence. Please join me in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your coloring journey, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Happy coloring. Bye now, everyone.